Well, I mean, so far this December for the December contract, we've seen over 10,000 COMEX futures contracts stand for delivery at 5,000 ounces each. That's more than 50 million ounces taken off the exchange. And in fact, it's over 60% of the registered category in on COMEX that was claimed in just the first four trading days of the month. And I mean, that just goes to show how intense demand for physical metal is. But this is not normal flow, dude. This is institutional accumulation. And it's interesting when you look at COMEX as the marketplace, not really where the silver come from. The real metal has always come from London. And the buyers on typically on the COMEX would be traders, but mostly big manufacturers who regularly take delivery. Sellers are mainly the bullion banks hedging for the miners. And this whole system worked really smoothly, dude, until because London could always fill the gaps, but now it seems they can't.
Right.
And with the shortness we've seen in London in terms of deliverable silver, where for a good portion of the year their exchange went from T plus 1 day. In other words, you have contracts you want to stand for delivery. T is Monday plus one, Tuesday, Wednesday. The bars are moving. The Bank of England says, listen, we're short on manpower and trucks. It's T plus 8 weeks. That's just as stupid as the server facility
Yeah,
in,
that's what I
in
was
in
gonna.
Illinois.
The
You
cooling
know,
failure.
right, right, and only on the metals servers, not any of the other 1,000 plus commodities that they change. And on Thanksgiving night, when there's no volume, everyone's
Right.
eating dinner. Too much volume, and the redundancy on these server systems where there's 2 and 3 and 4 times redundancy with air conditioners. Well, those failed too. Just at the same time that the December contract was going off the board, massive
Yeah.
short positions, stress in the market, and the rumor of a massive purchase.
The 400 million ounce from the Chinese
Right,
dude.
right. And so this whole thing, you put it together, and if it stinks like shit, it probably is
Yeah.
on both occasions, on both instances. And you know, at the same time, you have the United States classifying silver a critical mineral. I know you've talked
Yep.
about that. And then
Yep.
you have the buying from countries, in particular China and India, but don't forget Saudi Arabia and Russia. But, one of the things we've talked about a lot over the last year is how China has been sourcing silver in Mexico and Peru and other parts of Latin America directly from the source, right from the miners, before it ever hits the market by buying concentrate and doré. Doré are the crudely refined bars, and the concentrate is a byproduct sludge. Anyways, they're paying double what the West will and buying it in this pre refined stage, locking up supply directly at the source before it ever has a chance of reaching the exchanges. So basically, what we're seeing in one way or another is a good deal of physical demand going straight to the source and directly pulling metal out of the marketplace before it hits the global exchanges and taking it from the global exchanges like London, where they don't even have to touch futures here in the United States. But, the bottom line is that this is all happening as the removal of real silver from the COMEX is surging. And, is there a coincidence that the government just reclassified it, a critical mineral, and then the next contract, we see 50 million ounces taken off the exchange in the first 4 days of the contract, and it's not even over yet. I think that silver is a rocket ship waiting to happen.
Yeah.
It truly is. And now you have strategic stockpiling demand and structural tailwind for demand supported by national security and policy.
Yep.
And the government
Silver
has every
tariffs.
reason. Yeah, man, they have every reason to be worried about supply chain and geopolitical risk because we import 2/3 of our silver. And when you realize how much silver is needed and all the things from high tech weaponry, as we've talked about, to solar panels, to electric vehicles, to medical tech, how about AI data centers? Just read a very
Right.
interesting article about that. And it basically said that, you know, each one of these servers has a couple of, you know, a couple of ounces of silver in them, and there's tens of thousands of them. But that's not where the real amount comes from. It's powering these centers. And they were saying even a silver intensive 500 megawatt solar farm, which would be enough to power a AI campus, one major AI campus, can require 300 metric tons of silver, about 10 million ounces.
Yeah.
The whole world is moving in this direction. And so when you rely on the world, the rest of the world, heavily for your silver, and metal at the same time is leaving transparent markets. 75 million ounces, brother, have been pulled from COMEX since October and moved into stronger hands. And silver is a tiny, tiny, tiny little market facing a fire hose of new demand.
Yeah.
On Friday of last week, to push it down a buck, after it was right there at $60, silver market traded 583 million paper ounces, or 75% of annual global mine supply in one frickin' day. And so, in China on Friday, silver broke above $60 an ounce, and they've been leading the way. I just think that for years, Jordan, the institutional short positions have been the primary weapon, right, to suppress the silver price. Remember, we always say price is the greatest tool of misdirection.
Yeah, yeah.
But that mechanism is now breaking. And I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind. And even now, you get companies like UBS who are becoming vocal about this continual physical deficit between supply and demand. They're turning bullish. You got Bank of America saying
A lot of them.
$65.
Yeah.
They're all
Saxo Bank,
yes.
Merrill Lynch. Yeah, I was just talking about that the other day, how all these banks now are so vocal. How everyone is.
And
It's so
they've been
funny.
wrong, and they keep
Yeah.
reevaluating, keep changing.
Citigroup. It's so funny though. Like when silver was $11 in March of 2020, I was screaming at people to buy silver. And it's so hush about it. It's so quiet. Nobody wants to step out when the price is low, but when it's high and everyone's talking about it, everyone's so vocal about it, and that's where you
It's
could
the same
see.
exact thing when for 9 straight weeks in a row this summer the price went up and everyone was happy and buying it, and then
Yep.
it got hit down below $50, and I got 500 emails, people freaking out. Is it
Yeah,
over? Is
dude.
it over? And it's like you got to look at the big picture, and the big picture is that there is a resource war going on right now, and then you put national security policy underneath it.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
you
huge.
China is doing the same thing and limiting exports, where every ounce that leaves has to be permitted through Beijing. And most people don't know this, but the European Union did it in 2023. And so when you look at a world that is becoming increasingly digital, and electronic and electric and military moving in that direction,
Yep.
and the
Yep.
copious amounts of silver needed, you can't hold it down. And these institutional short positions that have been holding it down for years now represent an existential threat to these banks. And I think that this whole system worked for decades because few demanded delivery, but now
Yeah.
central banks are repatriating gold, and 50 freaking million ounces stands for delivery in the first 5 days of the COMEX contract here in December. The point of it is that the people who are bringing this kind of metal in, and this is just every month since November, not just December, it's going on 13 months where this has been every single month we're seeing this. They don't do this for shits and giggles. They know the outcome. They are way ahead of the crowd in terms of information. And for them to be bringing in that kind of amount tells you that, this is a lot bigger than even you and I are making it out to be right now.
Mm. Did you hear what India's doing next year, April of 26?
Yes, and there's a little bit of confusion on that. Yes, I did. And, I know that John Little talked about that. And it was good reporting. The only thing that I will take exception in that, you're talking about using silver and gold as collateral against loans for a bank. The only thing that I think, at least it's opening the door, right? Because
Right.
the limit, I think it's 500 grams in coins or up to like 10 kilos in jewelry or bars or something like that. But you're talking 10 kilos is 321 ounces. So it's not like it's a massive amount, but it's for the everyday person
And
because the
India's,
everyday
yeah,
person in India owns gold and silver.
right.
So the
India's a
everyday
massive
person,
country, you
it
know. That
is, it is. But if they wanted to make it really big, they would say, no limit on how much you can use.
right.
And then you get the big institutions doing it. But the everyday person in India holds gold and silver the way we would hold money in our checking account or our savings account, right? So they can now unlock the equity within their silver only up to, you know, just under 330 ounces or whatever, and use it as collateral. It is a big deal, but what it signals to me is that gold and silver are again progressing
Start, yeah.
to be reintegrated, if you will,
Yeah.
into the monetary
Yeah,
system. And we're seeing
India,
it all
yeah.
around the world.
Yeah, India won't be the last, that's just the start. And other countries I feel will follow suit.
We're getting to a point where, when Mexico number one, China number two, Peru number three, we're getting to a point where these countries have to start thinking for their own national security, their own national sovereignty. If the United States is bold enough to say we're making this critical for national security, at what point do all the countries say this? And at what point do all these countries say, screw it, I'm not going to send it to the United States. I'm going to keep it for our own national interests. And that's something to consider. And this is why China has been securing supply chains from these countries for years. They're 3 or 4 steps ahead of us. You never heard me
Oh
say
yeah.
the U.S. is going to into China, excuse me, into Mexico and Peru and buying Dorian concentrate, paying double what anyone else will, and shipping it back here to refine it. No, it's the opposite. China
Oh,
is going
China.
directly to those countries and buying it from Mexico and buying it from Peru, building a deep water port in Peru, trying to get them into the Belt Road, trying to get them into a system that will allow, them to be first in line and to get control of silver production before it even is called silver. And they're way ahead of the game.